Hey everybody, this is Cole and Jamie Boling with the Boling Group at Keller Williams, One Legacy Partners in Topeka. We are your husband and wife real estate team.
Hello.
Today we are on page 5 of the real estate contract. This is a continuation of the last couple videos as we are diving deep into our real estate contract. This contract is, or this page is all about inspections. That's it. This is what this page is. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through what each of these mean and what the importance of them are and what you may or may not want to do if you were to get an inspection. So we always start at the top. When will these be completed by? We generally do like to have everything done within 10 calendar days. It's about the right amount of time to get it done. Sometimes inspectors are backed up, as we saw in, earlier this year. It was 14 days or so before we could get some things done. If it's beyond 10 days, we do add the date in there. We like to add the date anyways, just because we know the date then, instead of just 10 calendar days, we do put it on there so that everybody is on the same page. Then what this says is in paragraph 12 of this contract, the buyer may have the property inspected, including without limitations, the following, which is mechanical equipment, plumbing, electrical, heating, central air systems. It can be structural aspects of the property, including
Pools.
Yeah, including foundations, drainage, roofs, fireplace, chimneys, siding, windows, doors, ceilings, floors, insulation, and interior, exterior things like fences, decks, sidewalks, driveways, and more. And some inspectors may know, or we may employ a specialist in environmental hazards that could be affect the property, things like radon, asbestos, mold, and other hazards. So what does that all mean and how do we break it down? Well, first and foremost, we start with siding or EIFS. So EIFS is a product that is kind of like stucco, and it's a system that goes onto the house, which generally has been known to have mold issues, water getting behind, other things like that. So you can get what's called a specific siding inspection or an EIFS inspection. Then we go to electrical. Honestly, most of these are pretty self-explanatory. Electrical, they'll go in and specifically look at electricity, fireplace and chimney. They'll go in and clean it if necessary. If we do have to usually request that they clean it, but they'll go in and look at the liner of the fireplace. It is kind of important that if you have a wood burning fireplace to have it inspected, because if the liner itself is not good anymore, it is extremely expensive to have a liner put in. It's upwards of $120 to $150 a foot to have a liner installed in your fireplace. So this is a very important inspection, and we'll circle back on this in just a second.
And each one of these, if you're going to have the inspection done, you would just put down who the inspection company is and the estimated cost of that inspection.
Yes.
Yep. Go ahead.
Then we go into foundations. So foundations, we have different foundation people for different things. Do we know there's an issue? Do we have walls that need beams put in? Do we have cracks we need investigated? Do we have concrete that's settled? So we have different inspectors for different parts of the foundation here. And once again, we would just add their information and estimated cost. Heating and cooling. So if we want a specialist to come in, which we generally see specialists come in for beyond simple AC units, right? So sometimes older homes have larger units or boiler systems and certain things that your general inspector won't know a lot about, and they may recommend that. And like I said, I'll circle back on all these in just a moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mold, mildew. So you cannot tell what kind of mold you have in a property just by looking at it. It has to go to a lab. So we do have specialists who come in, they take samples and they do send it off to a lab, generally about $350 to have mold tested. It is a great thing to do if you are, if there's a large amount of mold in your interest in property, I would get that inspected immediately. Then once you get that back, you can determine how much it would cost for mediation or remediating it. All right, then we go into plumbing. Very simple, same thing. If you want somebody to just look at certain parts of the plumbing, same thing with the roof. You can have somebody come out, which we do see a lot of specialists come out for roofs. the reason I say a circle back, I'm gonna circle back on all these in just a moment. You'll understand why. I'm gonna circle back on this one as well.
Yep.
Sewer cam. This is not involved in any whole house inspection. This is when a licensed plumber comes out with a camera and they run it down the sewer line and take a video. And then you can look and see what the sewer line looks like all the way to the city main. Sometimes it's into your own septic tank. We've had instances where the septic line may have gotten crushed going into the tank, and we ran cameras that way as well. So this is important. We do believe in this. No matter when the sewer was put in, if it was new or old, we do think you should run a sewer camera. Sewer augering. If we know there's a problem, we can request it to be augured right here on this. And who's going to do that?
It can typically cost, if you have to get a new sewer installed, it can typically cost about $3,500.
We've seen it all the way up to 15,000.
Yeah.
So it depends on how deep, how far, where it is, you know, if there's garages on top of it. There's a lot of different factors in play, but generally it's around 35 to 5,500.
Yeah, somewhere there.
Then we go into structural. So structural inspections is a little bit different than foundation. A structural is going to require an engineer. This is somebody who's going to come out and they're going to have schooling and technology and electrical equipment, and they're gonna do different things that are pretty detailed and intricate, that it's going to really figure out what kind of issues we have at play. Now, onto the whole house inspection. So this is exactly as it sounds. We implore companies that do whole house inspections. And what they do is they come in and they go through a checklist, typically 17 pages, depending upon who the inspector is and how they do their notes and stuff, but it's generally in that area, that amount, 20 pages or so. And they go through the entire house. What we do see a lot is the inspector saying something like, hey, that fireplace looks okay, but I saw something that kind of made me a concern. So what I would like to see is you get a fireplace person to come out. Well, we would not put that back into the contract, but that is something to consider. We can determine that up front who is doing that. So when I said I was going to circle back on a lot of these, if you choose to opt out of doing them in the initial inspection, you can do them if the whole house inspector recommends additional inspection, and it would fall under this category of your protection.
So it kind of saves you a little bit of money, because if you don't want to pay for all of these inspections all the way up front, you can wait for the whole house inspector to come out, take a look, and then wait to see if they recommend that you have somebody else come out and take a look at it in further detail. So.
Yeah, because they'll look at a roof and see if there's hail damage. They'll look at if there's granules in the gutters. They'll look at they'll typically fill up all the sinks and tubs and flush them all at the same time, and look at the water pressure, and then they'll test every outlet and look at the panel. So they do a lot of those things. The things they don't do is they don't run any cameras down the sewer lines. They're purely visual people. They will not move walls or look down things unless they can just go like that and see. Then we get into private drink water. So this would be like well water. We have a lot of people on these older houses in our rural areas are on wells. You can have the county or somebody come out and test the rural water or the drinking water. All they do is they come out, they take a sample of it, they send it to a lab, they run a chemical test on it and tell you if it's safe or not. Then if you have some other inspection you want to happen, and I've never really had anybody put anything on here, but we do have 2 spots for additional inspections that there may be a missile silo or something on your property, and you want to get a government specialist to come out and look at what this is all about. Like, you can put those things on here. There's a lot of different things that we have seen through the years that a typical whole house inspector will not know what it is or know how to handle it. If we know in the upfront, we can have somebody come out and look at that. The other big thing that we could put here would be like environmental stuff. Like if we know we were going to have a specific type of weeds or specific trees looked at by an arborist or somebody, we could put them in here, and that's part of the inspection as well. Okay. Then we have the initial box. We typically have at least one of these that's blank. We've never filled out one of these. I've never in all my years filled out every single line on here. So what we do is we initial this saying that any blanks that are not filled out, we understand that we're not having that specific inspection done. So just the buyers will initial that box.
Saying that they were offered to do all of those inspections, but they have declined to do them. So
Yes, very good. Now, what does this paragraph say below? This is important. We are one of the few real estate MLSs, which is our multiple listing services, that does it this way. What this says is we are going to determine upfront how things are going to be negotiated when all of these inspections come back, right? So first off, we have the listing company is authorized to schedule and obtain the above specific written inspection reports. All specific inspections are to be performed by acknowledged contractors or professionals who are registered and or licensed with registration or licensing requirements. So what that says is it is not required that they are a contractor or a licensed person, but it is recommended that people who do these are. It is not in your best interest to have your father or your family member who is an inspector inspect your property. It is a very high liability to have that happen. So we do recommend that professionals that we work with do it, even if your family member is a home inspector. It's just in your best interest to stay away from that connection.
Third party.
Very, very third party. Then we go into the event that the report of paragraph 12F related inspections indicate that the aggregate total cost for all repairs or replacements needed to be made can be properly completed for less than a specific dollar amount. And this is where we would put it, or a percentage of the contract price. Typically it is around 1%, right? So if you're buying a $300,000 house, that's $3,000. And that $3,000 says this: in the event that all these inspections result in $3,000 or less, the buyer will accept the house in as is condition and move forward to close. If the inspections result in anything over that negotiations start at 3,000 and beyond. We negotiate from there. So here's how this plays out. And this is very, very black and white.
And this is only for, excuse me, only for the inspections in section 12F.
Correct.
This does not include your termite inspection.
Or wastewater.
Correct. Yep.
Or boundaries. Anyways.
Yep.
So what this says is the buyer may, one, accept the property in as is condition. Remember, this is over $3,000 as the example I'm using. One, the buyer may accept the property in as is condition and be okay with it. Two, they may elect to renegotiate the cost of repairs or replacements exceeding that amount, which the seller and presenting them with an unacceptable condition or deficiency request, right? Negotiation request. Or three, they can elect to cancel the contract. However, the seller may, at his option, keep this contract in force by agreeing in writing to complete the repairs or replacements exceeding the aggregate amount. Buyer's notice shall be delivered in writing to the seller within 7 calendar days of the inspection deadline in paragraph 12F, which is that date at the top.
Right here.
So let me break that down for you. If they sell, if let's say it's $10,000 worth of stuff, and you're like, whoa, I'm done. I don't want to deal with this. It's too much, all that. And the seller says, hold up, I'm going to pay $7,000 worth of stuff. You still have a contract. That is how this is written. So be very, very sure that you want this house. You're willing to go through the inspections, because if the seller is willing to make the repairs and do the things that are required, it is a fully enforceable contract up until that $3,000 mark. Make sense?
Yep. So basically, if your aggregate amount is $1,000, repairs come in at $1,200, they can do $200 in repairs, and we can go right back into being under contract. So once we get the total inspection repair cost back, then it's either are they above it or below it? And if they're above it, we're back to negotiating. If it's below it, we're just moving on.
Yep.
Simple.
Yep. And sellers can elect to do it in multiple ways. We've seen people reduce the price of the property, the difference. We've seen them pay for things to be done. Sometimes there's just different ways that it can be completed.
Yep. And we are very creative on how to negotiate these things too. So
yes. And also when you work with the Boling Group, we have a large portfolio of contractors and people that we've worked with for years that we trust tremendously. So it is very smart to work with us, because we do have all of these people in play that make sure that you are taken care of. It gets done cheaper. We get discounts, we get contractor pricing and things like that. Okay.
And we've been known to do a couple things ourselves as well because we're not afraid to get our hands dirty.
Exactly. It helps working with somebody that understands houses and knows houses. Okay. And then any of the foregoing notices executed and delivered in writing to the other party or the party's agent prior to their respective deadlines will constitute sufficient notice. So you don't have to wait 7 days. Then at the end of this, we have 12G. 12G is the factors affecting inspections. Buyer acknowledges such inspections may not identify deficiencies in acceptable areas of the property and may be limited to weather conditions at the time of inspection. If a buyer opts not to conduct inspections or fails to deliver the completed written inspection reports to the seller, sellers represented as provided for above, buyer shall be deemed to have waived all rights to negotiating repairs that they accept the property and is as addition and agrees to proceed to closing in compliance with the remainder of the contract. So dates are important. It is a legally binding contract. You can't show up the day before closing and say, oh, by the way, I want that done after all. We don't play those games. We get it all done up front. Everybody's protected. That's why doing business with us makes your transactions super smooth.
Yep. And so if there are any inspection repairs that would be negotiated, we do have another amendment that we would use, buyer inspection notice addendum, I think is what it's called. We'll have another video on that to explain how we use that. But basically on this one, you just have to make sure sellers and buyers initial, and we are good to go on page 5. So
take it easy, guys. Have a wonderful day. Remember, we're Cole and Jamie Boling with the Boling Group at Keller Williams One Legacy Partners, and we look forward to working with you soon. See ya.